Welcome to a new episode in our series on Max 101. Today's episode will be extensions. Planned extensions, unplanned extensions, stuff that's just my ideas floating around. This will also include the stations. So first things first, the first thing that we're going to see extended is the red line. By about 2024, the red line is supposed to be extended 10 stations to the Fair Complex Max Station. This is because the red line currently ends at the Beaverton Transit Center, and a lot of people get off the train, cross the tracks, and get on a blue line train to continue further into Hillsborough. Basically, it just crowds up the blue line more. Because everybody gets off those trains and gets on a blue line train, so all of a sudden it becomes more crowded. So they're extending the red line by 10 stations and reconfiguring the track layouts at Gateway and removing all the single track segments and replacing them with 2 track segments. If I remember, I'll post a link to that in the description, but I totally won't because I'm gonna forget. But just go on to TriMet's page and go to their Making Transit Better, and you'll find it on their Better Red Line project. I would suggest throughout this video going to kind of doing this on the computer rather than watching it on your phone. That way you could have 2 tabs side by side. One of them that has the video player and another one that has the TriMet map. The rail map. This map. But you don't have to do that because I will just plaster that map across the screen with the extension color put on there and what I would be doing. So yeah, it would help so that you can kind of visualize it better on the actual map where I'm talking about and where it would actually go. The other planned, highly planned extension is of the Green Line, which currently ends at the Jackson Street turnaround at the bottom of 5th Avenue. Well, it would be extending from there and going through the southwest Portland area into Tigard, Tualatin, and ending at the Bridgeport Village. So now let's talk about some other things that have been talked about. That really didn't make much sense, did it? Firstly is the Blue Line. The Max Blue Line, as of now, ends in Hillsborough. Duh. That's why it says Blue Line to Hillsborough. Well, there's been talk for a while now of extending it out to Pacific University in Forest Grove. Firstly, I'm going to give you my input on this because, again, these videos are very rambly and I have no script. I literally have a list of episodes in front of me and I have just a description. Blue line, red line, yellow line. Just a brief description of what each one is. These videos are unscripted, so get ready for rambliness. But right now, the Max, if you ever take it into Hillsborough, or if that's your normal commute, is taking it into Hillsborough, or whatever, you'll know what happens once you get past about Orenco. Anything from Orenco on, the trains are pretty empty. Especially the whole Hatfield and Hillsborough Central area, it's pretty empty. So I really don't see the point in extending it out to Forest Grove. The 57 bus continues off to Forest Grove, and it serves the Hillsborough Transit Center there. And if you get on the bus there, it goes out to Forest Grove. And it doesn't really take that long, and I've done it before. I've done the whole 57 bus because I was curious. And by the end, there's hardly anybody in Forest Grove. So extending it out to Forest Grove, I think you're just going to be creating a ghost town train ride all the way out there. But I do have an idea for the extension out to Forest Grove, and it would extend off of this map. It would be extending out from Hillsborough way off the end of the map into Forest Grove. And here is a list of stations for that, what they would be called. And again, this would be helpful to have a computer right now. On your second tab over on the side, you could open up Google Maps and you could see what these areas are called. The whole Sun West thing, that's the name of a shopping center right in Cornelius that has Winco, DMV, Dollar Tree, Dutch Brothers, all that stuff. But I bet most people didn't realize it was called Sun West, because I certainly didn't, or all this other stuff. So it'd be nice to do that, because there are at least two major shopping areas out that way that would probably benefit with extra traffic and all that being taken out that way. And while we're looking ahead, we might as well realize that, well, by 20 years from now, the blue line and red line, hopefully, will both be underneath Portland, because they want to build a subway from Goose Hollow to Lloyd Center. We're going to talk about that next time. But for now, we'll just kind of brush over it. But they want to build the subway underneath Portland, and hopefully by the time that happens, maybe there will be an extension out to Forest Grove. Maybe there will be more people out there. Maybe the Hillsborough area and that spot for all the trains and people getting on board and whatever for the trains, maybe it'll become more crowded. Hillsborough is growing like crazy, and there's a lot more people here than there were even 5 or 6 years ago. And they just keep building and building and building and building. And so yeah, there's a lot more people coming here. And so the demand for transit out to Forest Grove could become a possibility. And so by 20 years from now, the MAX may be extended out to Forest Grove, and it may be running underneath Portland. And so that would be my ideal future blue line, I guess, if the Forest Grove thing needed to be extended. Again, I really don't see the need for it at this moment in time, but you could still do that. Now for the yellow line. Firstly, let's go from the Expo Center on, because right now it ends at the Expo Center, and I mean the Columbia River is just right after that. And what's on the other side of the Columbia River? Vancouver, Washington. I hear all the time about the crazy amounts of traffic for people that live in Vancouver but work in Portland. There is a surprising number of people who do that. It's not really that much of a lengthy commute. We're really close to Vancouver, Washington, but it takes the rest of the day just to get back home because of the immense amount of traffic on I-5 or I-205 or whatever your means is of getting across the river. Having MAX service across there makes it the same speed all year and all day and whatever. It doesn't matter. The trains will just keep going across the river. This idea of extending the yellow line into Vancouver was actually planned a really long time ago as well. There was something called the Columbia River Crossing, which you can probably look up yourself. It was about a new bridge that would cross the Columbia River, kind of like how Tillicum Crossing was built for the Orange Line to cross the Willamette River. It would have been kind of similar. It would have been the Columbia River Crossing that would have crossed the Columbia River. Then it would have gone into Washington, and it would have gone into Vancouver. Now, I have also made a list of stations for the Yellow Line extension into Vancouver, and you can go on Google Maps. I went along a freeway after a while. Like, I have a station up at Jansen Beach, which is still Portland. It's a little island thing that is in the Columbia River, and it's a beach. I've never been there, but I've seen it overhead on Google Earth satellites. Anyway, and then from there it goes into Washington, and it serves some areas in the downtown thing. And then there is a freeway right there afterwards. It's a highway of some kind. I don't remember exactly what the number is. Anyway, it goes along there, and it ends... I don't even remember where I ended it. I have the list of stations somewhere on my phone. But yeah, it basically goes along the highway the whole time. So it would be fast, it would be swift, and it would get you into Washington. The problem is, you just have to convince Washington that TriMet wants in. We want to get a single line in there. We don't need any bus service. Vancouver has the C-Tran bus network. That's all Washington. But some of it does cross over the Columbia, and it does come into Portland. So I see it as a two-way street, or maybe a two-way set of tracks, by way of us getting the TriMet into Washington as well, even if it's just brief, and even if it's just a single MAX line, it would dramatically increase the amount of passengers on the yellow line. Imagine if you worked at Pioneer Square, or if you worked near Pioneer Square, but you lived in Vancouver, right by that college up there. Clark College, I think is what it's called. Imagine that long distance driving that. Well, now you have a solution. You can just go to the Pioneer Courthouse yellow line thing, get on a yellow line, and take it all the way straight up into Vancouver. That's it. You could go from anywhere and transfer at the Rose Quarter area, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Wherever you live, you can just get on the yellow line and go back up into Vancouver if you wanted to. And I think it would make it a whole lot easier if you allowed all C-Tran fares, all TriMet fares, if everything was compatible with each other. Although, because it would eliminate confusion. Although because of price differences, I believe there are price differences, maybe it would make one more fair than the other. I'm not really sure. You'd probably be able to iron out all those things later on. But for now, the yellow line I propose to extend into Vancouver. But I also have another thing with the yellow line. So right now, the orange line and yellow line are exactly the same. And I have an idea for how to not have it like that. Right now, I've talked about it. You can watch it on my Max 101 series on episode 19, the yellow and orange line confusion. Well, it shouldn't be like that. It should all be the yellow line. But maybe it doesn't have to be. If you had the yellow line starting at Expo Center, or I guess Vancouver, depending on whatever time period this may take place in or whatever, if at PSU you had it turn west and go toward Beaverton and Hillsborough, and even further than that, then you could have a Sunset Highway Max. So it'd be a very lengthy line going up from Vancouver all the way through Portland and then extending all the way along the Sunset Highway. Now, what would the Sunset Highway extension look like? Well, it would basically be max tracks along or even possibly under the Sunset Highway. And this would be a lifesaver for a lot of people because there are buses on many roads that cross the Sunset Highway. And so, for people who want to transfer to them, you can do so. Kind of like the Max Green Line, how if you want to catch the 9 bus at Powell Boulevard, you just take the Max Green Line to Powell Boulevard and cross the tracks and then go down to the street. I've done it before. It's a short walk. It doesn't, and every single Max stop is like that, where it basically stops and there's a bridge overhead at the station that you go to, or maybe you're above it and you go down to it, or whatever, but you can transfer to the bus on that road. So, yeah, it'd be the same here with this Sunset Highway Max. Here's a list of stations that it would serve. And you notice it ends all the way at Glencoe Road. Now, Glencoe Road, that's basically North Plains. That's the very edge of Hillsborough. You wouldn't really need to have it go all the way out there, but you could because it is still considered Washington County. And that's another thing. You notice a station in there for Hillsborough Stadium? There's hardly any TriMet service that close to the stadium. I think there is a bus that gets you pretty close, but it's a bus. So if you wanted to have a massive event, like when I graduated high school, I graduated at that stadium. And so to have a separate Max station there with a big platform and a big crossing over or under the highway that took you right to the stadium, that would be a lifesaver for people who either don't know how to drive or who have a hard time getting there or who rely on transit or whatever your reason is. You could just take the Max there and it would be a station dedicated for a lot of people. And that way, if there's a big baseball game going on or whatever, a Hops game, then you could go there and go up to the stadium. So what about the orange line? I mean, surely it would have to still change to a yellow line, right? No, it wouldn't. You could go to the University of Portland. So basically, it would extend from, it would be the orange line from Milwaukee all the way up, and it would go up to the Albina, Mississippi station, I believe is what I had it as. It would go up to Albina, Mississippi on the yellow line, and from there it would branch off and it would go along the industrial areas all along the river. And there's a huge industrial, that's all it is. It's a lot of manufacturing stuff and whatever. And it would go along through there, possibly elevated because the streets are kind of narrow, or whatever you could figure out. And it would end up at the University of Portland. You could easily do this. And that way the yellow line and orange line are in fact separate, even though they run together from Albina, Mississippi, all the way to the end at PSU. That would mean the green, yellow, and orange lines would all run on 5th and 6th Avenues. They don't call it the Transit Mall for nothing. Catch tons of different buses and 3 different Max lines down there, plus the streetcar all the way down at PSU. It's the Transit Mall. Now, while we're talking about the orange line, you might as well extend it to the Oregon City Transit Center. I mean, why not? The Oregon City is not that far away from Southeast Park Avenue. Now, for a while, there was talk about extending the Green Line out to Oregon City, which you could do, but Clackamas is a lot further than Milwaukee is from Oregon City. So I would just say extend the Orange Line there. So this is my list of stations. Again, all these list of stations, these are all my list of stations. These are not official by any means. These are all my ideas. So these would be the stations on there. And again, this is why it would be helpful to have Google Maps open, because if you're unfamiliar with this area, then you can see how there's some large shopping areas that are not served by the MAX because it ends randomly in the middle of nowhere at Park Avenue. So this would help that. Now, the west side has a lot of space not served by transit. It seems like the main goal is to get transit running through Portland and really through the east side, because heck, they even extended the Portland streetcar over to the east side. You've got every MAX line on the east side. Every single MAX line goes across the east side. Well, I have another west side MAX that would be throughout the whole area of Beaverton, Tualatin, and Tigard. And I know what you're thinking. I'll just take the west. What's the point? I'll just literally take the west. Well, you do that. But the problem with the west is that it only runs every 30 minutes, and it only runs during the weekday rush hours. So good luck taking it on a Saturday at 10:30 p.m. because good luck taking the west. I mean, you could take a bus. I can't remember if it's the 76 or 78 bus that basically runs throughout many of the west stations. But yeah, you could do that. But at the same time, you could have a dedicated train line serving the areas. Now, this is a separate train line. Now, I have a couple of ideas. If the blue line continues to just end in Hillsborough, the red line in the future will be ending at the Fair Complex station. This frees up the pocket track at Beaverton Transit Center, which is currently used for red line trains. But my new line, we're going to call it the Purple Line, this begins at the Beaverton Transit Center pocket track, assuming that the red line thing works, ending at the Fair Complex. So the Purple Line would start at the Beaverton Transit Center. That means 3 MAX lines would be serving this. It would extend from there, and this is a bit hard to explain, but after a while, after you leave Beaverton Transit Center going eastbound toward Portland, the tracks kind of turn and it goes along Highway 217. Well, before you take that turn, the tracks would branch from there and they would go south. So a new extension of tracks that would branch south from there, and kinda sorta along the west, but not really. It would be along Highway 217, and it would serve these stations. But then, once you got to Southwest Hall Boulevard, that Southwest Hall Boulevard MAX station is the same station as the Green Line's extension to Bridgeport Village. So from Hall Boulevard on to Bridgeport Village, it would be served by the Purple Line and Green Line extension out there to Bridgeport Village. So there you go. I mean, that would be how it works. So it would basically, in a way, it would connect you from the blue and red lines up in Beaverton to the Green Line's extension down at Bridgeport Village. So that way you wouldn't have to, like, let's say I lived right by the Beaverton Central MAX station. That way I wouldn't have to, like, go, oh man, I still have to take a bus so that I can get to the whole Bridgeport Village area. So this way it would just kind of connect you from this extension of the Green Line down to the other areas on the system. That appears to be it for this video. I will see you next week for another episode of The Ideas.